make sure I'm on the mic. If you are watching me on the replay, I'm not on the mic. Okay. If you're watching me on the replay, hi, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And I am streaming live on all social media platforms. I'm trying to make sure I'm going to be live on Instagram before I start. Let me see. Go live. Oh, it's not. So today is Wednesday, and so last week we started the series, What's on Your Mind? And the goal behind this is to come here on Wednesdays and give small snippets of something that people go through and helping people think about how they can process it. And Instagram is not letting me go live. I'm so sorry, Instagram. I'm not sure why, because it says I'm connected. Okay, so last week we talked about challenging thoughts and how hard it is to deal with thoughts that come in, and I also talked about the fact that you can't help the thoughts that come up, right? So you can find that on social media, or you can find it streaming on podcast. But those are things that a lot of people struggle with and don't understand how to combat it. And so I kind of broke that down. Today, I want to talk about allowing other people to dim your light. So a lot of times people may struggle with comments or things that other people say. And I think it's important for people to know that people will always have an opinion about you, whether you choose to do the thing that you want to do or not, right? And these opinions can come from so many different places. I think about family is a big one for people. A lot of people may have grown up in systems where there was this expectation of ways in which you were expected to be. And unfortunately that, you're an adult, like, yeah, you're a kid, but, and you have influence by your family, but as you get older, you have your own thoughts, views, opinions. Even when it comes to professions, your family may have had a specific profession they may have wanted you to be in, and you may not see it that way. And I always tell people it's so important to do what you love and love what you do. Because at the end of the day, pleasing other people means that you're stuck with living with what you've created for your reality, which is hard. I think some people, even outside of family, some people are afraid of the opinions of others and what they will think. Uh, and I tell you, I read a lot and listen to a lot of videos. One thing about people that are at the end of their life, what they say that the one thing that they regret is caring about what other people think. And it never fails, right? A lot of people, if they can do things over, they would actually do the things that they want to do. And that's something that's hard. So even though I tell people do what you love and love what you do, it's also important to note that it does come with some feelings that may feel hard, disappointment or judgment. And those are moments, right? The feelings that come are what you're experiencing in the moment. And that can feel hard. Like, I want to name that feels hard. But I think about, if you don't do the things that you love and love what you do, that moment that feels hard turns into a lifetime. And when you do the math, the lifetime of feeling like you feel because you're not living out your best potential, um, a lifetime of feeling that way can feel scarier when you think about it. That's scarier than, you know what, let me just get over this moment and try to, like, do what I love. Hey, Cynthia. And so, like, think about it that way, right? Because I know that is challenging. Anytime I ever talk about things, I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying it's something that's easy to do because I recognize it's not easy to do. So I just want to name that. Um, I know that you're essentially introducing a foreign concept to your life, right? And I always say, like, when you get a fever, your body is fighting off that substance, whatever that infection that's trying to come into your body. So even though when you're trying to do the things that you love and loving what you do, it sounds like, man, I should feel good about this, right? It does. It sounds like a good thing. But unfortunately, the feeling can feel hard, especially if you're used to pleasing others, especially if you grew up in a system where you were taught to care about other people's opinions. That can feel hard. And, in the age of social media, like, I look at social media as a good thing because I get to reach people and talk about mental health, right? And I've learned how to cook on social media. So for me, like, it's been good. I've catered it to a way that I enjoy, but I also recognize if you're not mindful, social media can create more fear in you if you're not mindful on how you're utilizing it. I'm 41. Social media didn't exist growing up for me, so I never had a chance to. I wasn't looking at other people's stuff or wondering, like, oh my God, they got that. How can I get that? The only people that I seen was on TV or in a magazine. And so the magazine was quick, put it down, wasn't on it all day. So it's important to recognize, like, how certain things play a role in your ability to start the thing you want to do. And that could be anything, right? Recognizing the messages that are being sent, like, you're not there yet. A lot of people struggle with where they are in life, but also aren't doing anything about it to change. And a lot of that is fear and validation from others. Another thing when it comes to, are you waiting for validation from others, is sometimes you may have an idea and you share it with someone who may not understand it, right? Let's say, like, entrepreneurship is something that you want to do, and you're working and you're talking to somebody that has been with their company and they enjoy the company for 25 plus years. It works for them, and all they know is working for someone. So they may give you advice that may feel hard and judgmental, but remembering your audience, like, when you're talking about something that you say you want to do, be mindful on who you're sharing it with, right? Because some people are only able to give knowledge from the situations they've been in or what they're going through. And so being mindful that that validation from that person about this thing you're trying to start may not happen, right? And so let's talk about a solution, right? Because I realize a lot of people tend to wait for validation from other people before they get started. So the first thing, if this is you, the first thing I want you to think about doing is asking yourself what you want in order to do the thing that you have to do. You have to separate yourself from others. That doesn't mean you have to stop talking to them. But when I say separate yourself from others and things, maybe that's a break from social media. Maybe that is like making intentional time alone to process the thing you say you want to do, write out the plan. A lot of times we keep it in our head. And if we're keeping it in our head, that can be hard, especially if there's a lot happening internally for us. Our mind is not able to, like, you got to pull it out so that it's not all jumbled up with all these other things, the things that may have been said or the ways that you haven't been able to be consistent. All of the things your mind is keeping score of. And then you have this thought. It's hard for it to get flushed out if you're not separating yourself from TV, from social media, from people, and actually start to flush it out, right? So if this is something that you are struggling with and you want to work on changing that, make time alone, because what happens is, the mind believes what we tell it. And so if we start, like, really flushing out this thing we want to do, I'm going to stick with the entrepreneurship example. Our mind will start to begin to look for evidence to see how it can happen, right? If we allow fear or somebody's opinions of others, that person that worked 25 years, who was like, I wouldn't do that if I was you, you could work for a company, blah, blah, blah. But that person, for them, it's working out well. They enjoy the company, right? That's their mindset because that's their life and they love it. And so my mind will not look for evidence where I can like create this entrepreneurship plan because I'm so stuck on what somebody said. So if that's something that you find yourself struggling with, take time to separate yourself. Second thing, ask yourself, how does their opinion and what I'm doing helps me? Right. So sometimes, like the entrepreneurship example I gave, this guy, we understand, said that because of their journey with work and it's working out. Sometimes it could be just an opinion from a family member. Let's say they wanted you to be a doctor, and you wanted to do something different. They're not a doctor, but their opinion is like, why would you do that? Like, there's this woman on Insecure. I forgot her name, but she's African. I remember hearing her talk about um, becoming an actor and how her family was not encouraging of her journey until they realized, like, oh, she made it. They seen her on TV and they were like, oh, you made it. And then the encouragement started, right? I think about her and sharing that story and how if she allowed the opinions of her family, who had good intentions, to stop her, she never would have seen the possibilities. And I'm assuming she's a creative, right? A lot of actors, people that are musicians, artists. There are a lot of creators. And remember, if you live in America, there's nothing really carved out for creators. Like my degree as a therapist, you go to school, you get a degree. It's pretty set forward. Like I can work in different places. But for creatives, I find that they struggle a lot more because there's no real direct route. And so it can feel really hard. So, the opinions of others will come strong. And so if you're not mindful of making sure you're paying attention to that person's opinion, you got to recognize, like, how is that helping me? Right? Because the clock continues to tick. You continue to have this idea in your head, and allowing the opinion of what somebody thinks you should do, especially like you breathe alone, right? You got to go through life alone. When we die, we're in the box alone. So it's really important to be mindful of that. The third thing I want you to think the third thing I want you to think about doing is accept who you are and know that you can cause yourself more harm when you are not yourself, right? If you are not being who you were designed to be, and mind you, we were all uniquely and wonderfully made. Like my gifts, like I enjoy talking to people, help them solve their problems. There are some people they can't even imagine like doing that. Like, and there's some things that people do, like for instance, people who work with kids or people who are accountants. I can't even imagine doing that. Like, I don't want to see numbers. Like I just can't even imagine, right? But again, that wasn't my role in life. I was not designed to be an accountant. I wasn't designed to work with cars. Like putting things together for me takes time. There's some people they can look at they don't even need to look at the instructions. They could just look at the pieces and start to piece them together. And I'm like, there's some people can listen to music and like play it. Like how do self-taught artists, like I think about, I get to work with so many amazing people. And when I hear what they do, and I'm always like, dang, like that's so crazy. Like, how do you do that? And people will look at me and be like, how do you do that? Because guess what? We're different. Right. And that's another reason why it's important not to compare yourself or your journey to someone else's, because everybody's story is different. Everybody's gifts are different. But if you don't make time to invest in your gift, if you don't make time to flesh out your gift, if you don't make time to like do the thing that you know is in you, right? I always say that our internal self knows like it knows our capacity, it knows what we're capable of, right? Because prior to all of the junk and stuff that has happened in your life, like you were fearless, right? I always say babies, right? They continue to try to walk. They haven't been like screwed up with different things. So they see people walk. And so they're constantly surrounded by their goal. And so even though they fall, they continue to get back up, right? And, life happens to people in different ways. And I think about that. And I think about how we have allowed circumstances, opinions, and things to stop us. And we forget who we are. Like we've allowed the circumstances to tell us who we are because of that internal like dialogue that we got to work on changing. But everyone is very uniquely and wonderfully made. And so when you have that gift, you got to learn, how do I expand on this gift, right? The last thing I want to say about this subject, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask, is to be patient with yourself. So it's one thing to like think about these things that you say you want to do, and work on doing them. But again, I think when people start to stack themselves against where somebody else is, that person may be a trust fund baby. That person may not they haven't had the life you had, or the circumstances. They may not have had to survive life. Like things may have been handed to them. You never know someone's story, but whatever it is, that's their story. It'll never be your story. And so as you're on this journey to like really work on doing the things you say you want to do, make sure that you're being patient with yourself around the process. Because if you don't, it's hard to create a life that you want and love if you are bullying yourself at the same time, right? Like if you are talking negative about your journey, then how the heck are you going to be able to work on it, right? Like if you just always like, oh, this isn't good enough, or whatever it is. So many different things we say, and you know what? Sometimes you don't even realize you're saying it. That's why I said whatever that goal is, getting it out of your head, because that way it's not in the mumble jumble of things. And another thing I want to add to it, like whatever the goal is that you want to do, start to surround yourself with things and people that are in alignment with that, right? Like I'm just going to stick with the entrepreneurship thing because that's the thing I started with. But let's say the entrepreneurship thing is what you want to do. Reading books on the journey, and that literally what I did. Like, it so happened I used the entrepreneurship journey, but I definitely thought I was going to work somewhere and retire because that's what I seen happen. And I started to recognize that, working in nonprofit for me personally was not the route I wanted to be, because people were putting band-aids on things. The systems were putting band-aids on things, and we weren't getting to the root of the problem. I recognized that I had a lot of limitations. And so I, little by little, I was like, okay, like let me work for myself. And when I started working for myself, I was scared. There was opinions from other people who are working in a company that they love, doing the things that they love. They gave solid advice for their journey, not for my journey. But there were others, right? I started to align myself with more people on the entrepreneurship journey and started to see like, okay, I can see how this can take place. I can see how this can happen. Not just people, but books. I started watching YouTube series on businesses. Like there were so many different things I did, right? Because you may say like, but Celeste, I don't know nobody on this journey, whatever that is for me. I don't know nobody on this journey. Don't wait for you to know somebody on this journey. There are podcasts that talk about literally anything you are trying to do. There's a podcast on it, right? There's also books on it, right? So don't get stuck in the barriers. Like, that's one thing when people work with me and they'll bring up a barrier and the solution, mind you, I'm not a genius. Like I'm just Celeste, right? I talk about mental health. But because I'm on the outside looking in and I'm talking to people, I start to see how they allow the barriers to stop them. Granted, yeah, it is helpful to have certain things to start a journey, right? Like if I had a limited amount of income to like create things, like, yeah, heck yeah, it would be easy. But the reality is if I don't have it, I don't have it. What can I do? And even before I opened up my office and I had this passion to talk about mental health, before it was popular, this is like back in 2013, it was very unpopular to talk about mental health. And I just went on Instagram and started posting motivational quotes, right? That was the beginning of my journey. It wasn't even in the office space. The office space happened 3 years later in 2016. So 2013, 2012, I'm online, I'm putting up quotes, I'm talking about mental health, very unpopular, but guess what? That was my goal, that was my vision, that was my passion. And then fast forward, because I started that journey, I used what I had, right? I was still working somewhere, but I used what I have. I'm like, oh, they're putting Band-Aids on things. And a lot of people in the Black community don't understand mental health, and I'm Black. And it's easier for me to get the message out because people are going to relate to me. And so I just started there. And I kept every time I started something, I kept seeing the possibilities of something else, right? And so from there and doing that, I started part-time renting out space to work with people and do individual therapy. I wasn't really sure if that was what I was going to do, but I started off small. Still had my job, right? Some of these platforms will be like, you got to quit your job if you're going to do what you love. I'm like, I don't know if this thing's going to work out, and I still got bills to pay. So I kept my job and I did the part-time thing. Part-time thing started working out. And then I found a space back in 2016, and I started working, but I still had my job. It was like, I need my job. But within a month, I got so inundated with clients that I had to quit my full-time job, right? Because the math was mathing for that space. But I also had a per diem job that I was able to do because, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't just cut the cord all the way, because I'm a survivor. I got to pay my bills. And so I'm doing this thing full time. I got this per diem gig. And so I did that up until 2019. And in 2019, it got to the point where like I didn't need the per diem job and I was able to fully work for myself. That journey started in 2013 where I was posting online. And it got to the point because I kept pushing forward in what I said I wanted to do, not just reading the books, but action oriented. I find myself seeing the possibility. Now, even with so I got this practice and I'm like, all right, cool, this is going to be good. But then because I'm in this space, this mental health world, I started to see more possibilities. I never wanted to be an author. I sat with people that talked about wanting to write a book. Never came to my mind that I wanted to write a book. But because I would go online and talk about mental health and talk about ways people can work on themselves, I would talk about journaling because I've always journaled. And then I created a guided journal through realizing that people needed the resource. And so I'm like, cool, I got my practice, I got my book, like it's cool. But again, I'm in the space and the possibilities, how can I reach more people? I've sat with people that talked about wanting to start a podcast, never wanted to start a podcast. I honestly never even wanted to be on the forefront. Like when I started my practice, I didn't even have my picture on there. Like my social medias was private. I didn't even want to be like out. And so then I'm like, how do I reach more people? I was like, I could start a podcast. So in 2018, I set up on the venture to start a podcast. I didn't just start it. I started to do research on it. I didn't just do research because what happens is people will do research, get the information and not pull the trigger. And so I started July 2nd, 2018. But 2 months prior to that, I started to promote this podcast that wasn't ready, but I was like, I got to put it out there. I kept putting it out there so my mind could see the possibilities. And I kept doing the research, right? So I did that. And then I pulled the trigger July 2018, been doing it ever since. And so many different things that I've done. It wasn't this grandiose plan I had. I promise you. There are people, when people have a plan, they know what they want to do. I admire that. I'm like, wow, that's dope. Like, I honestly didn't see myself in 2024 in the space that I'm in speaking right now on live, right? But because in 2013, I decided to post quotes because I had this passion. I didn't know how it was going to air out, but I used what I had, allowed me to get to this place I am today. So I share that because I want you to really think about even though what you want to do, you may not have all the resources, you may not have all the tools, but you got the vision. Nobody can take the vision away from you. And so with the vision, don't get stuck in what you don't have, right? Like that's important. When I wanted to work on my health holistically and really start to work out and move my body, most people talk about going to the gym. I didn't have money for a gym. I didn't even have a babysitter. So I used what I had. I worked out in my living room on YouTube, right? I'm a very resilient person in that way. Like things have happened or are happening, but I have trained my mind not to get stuck in that space. And I think that's important for us to do because we allow our circumstances, we allow the opinions of others to stop us from being great. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this makes sense. I always like say to people, like, if anything I ever say resonates for you, like, please don't let this just be a feel good like session, you know, like with my people I work with, I'm always giving them things to think about in between times or things to work on because the real work happens when you leave the session, right? So like, yeah, this felt good to hear. But when you leave here, like, what are you going to do? Because guess what? Your mind's not going to help, you know, the reason why like listening to something like this can feel very inspiring and motivating is because you're in that environment. Like I grew up in church on Sundays. I felt like everybody was inspired and motivated because they're in this environment. But like Monday through Saturday, it wasn't the same situation that people had because they weren't creating that environment throughout the week, right? And so whether it's this podcast or anything you listen to or read, and you feel motivated or inspired, like you got to write it down. I'm so big on writing down. I use this notebook to write down. I still have the notes from when I was going to start the podcast because I was reading a book about profitable podcasting. And I literally have the notes because I'm a slow learner. So I got to listen, I got to read, I got to take notes. And I put it where I can see it. And so if you're trying to make changes, you can't just like think it's going to happen by accident. Only way it's going to happen is with intention. When I wanted to drink more water, I put a sticky note on my computer because I use my computer for work where it said, don't forget to drink water. So every time I open my computer, I see the sign and then I have water. This is like 2 years ago. I always have water at my desk now because I created that. Like just because I wanted to drink more water doesn't mean my system was going to remind me. The reason why my system wasn't going to remind me because it wasn't used to it. Now I don't have a sticky note here because I'm already used to it. So if there's anything that you say you want to do, you got to really be intentional on creating an environment that's going to remind you because society, I promise you, I'll bet anything on it. Society is not going to remind you, hey, Lakia, society will not remind you that, oh, you want to do wellness? Oh, you want to take care of yourself? Oh, you want to work on the symptoms and get to the root of the problem? And this society, if you live in I'm not talking for other societies. I'm talking about for people that live in America that wants to profit off of our pain. They're not going to like have a commercial late at night that is not pharmaceutical related that says, oh, you're feeling down. What's your sleep like? Like, what are you eating? Are you moving your body? Who's in your life? Are they creating more drama? Like maybe you need to let some people, you ain't gonna never find no commercial like that. So that means that because I know that society is not going to provide that for me, I cannot wake up and not be intentional. I can't wake up and hop on social media. Like I can't wake up and start checking my work email right away. Like I got to really start my day with me because when I start my day with me, I'm teaching my mind how to operate, right? If I start my day with social media, if I start it with my work email, I don't even have my work email on my phone. Like I just don't play. I don't have notifications for social media on my phone. I literally do not play about intention. And because I know how strong the energy is and negative in the society, I am so mindful. Like just because I know this stuff doesn't mean absolved from being influenced by it. Like I'm in the same boat you are. But the difference is that like I'm creating intention around the things I want to do because I know what happens if I don't. And so my goal is to teach you about this stuff because society's not going to teach you, and you can like make the changes that are going to work for you. So I hope this was helpful. Hi, TikTok. And so we're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn every Wednesday. Actually, we're not on Instagram. I couldn't get Instagram to go. I feel bad but hopefully we'll be on Instagram next Wednesday. So every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for people that are in the different coasts, 9 a.m. So you either can have lunch with me or have breakfast with me, whatever it is. I appreciate you. And then also you'll be able to find this talk streaming on all platforms. If there's ever a subject you want me to talk about, you can go to my website and write it in the box, right? And I will put it on the schedule to talk about it. Until next time.